Okay, so we did two articles, Millennials Felt Persistent Debt and Jobless Woes, and No One Should Have to Work for Free. The first article covers profiles of a couple different people. The first that they talk about is Kamani Tripathi. She's 23 years old. She graduated from Georgetown. She works two jobs and is also on food stamps. The way that this goes about, the article goes about outlining these different individual lives is through different statistics and circumstances in which their life goes through. So for instance, the first statistic that we have here is that 10% of Americans between the age of 18 and 24 are 10% less likely than a decade ago to have a job. If you include idling workers, the statistics for total youth unemployment for people under the age of 25 is 18.1, while if you don't, it's 14.5. That's more than double the total national unemployment for people in that age range. One of the biggest things is that people are still going to school and they're incurring lots of debt. Right now, Americans collectively owe over $1 trillion in student debt. Now, this number has doubled from 481 million 8 years ago now to being over $1 trillion. And this is numbers as of 2014. This includes a lot of impacts to our economy. One of the major ones that we have is underemployment. Underemployment is when highly skilled workers take low-paying, low-skilled jobs, meaning that they're not being as fully productive as they could be normally. This has had multiple effects on our economy, such as stunted growth, protracted debt obligations, and creation of a student loan bubble. Now, the student loan bubble is something that has been brought up more in the news more recently because they're saying that, economists are saying that higher education, and when you talk about private institutions like University of Phoenix, they've had a 50% enrollment drop. Their stocks have crashed close to 20% in the last few weeks. This is a big deal because these are a lot of people that are accruing lots of debt, and they're not going to have the jobs that are going to be able to assist them paying that back. Okay. So right now, as of 2013, a very large percentage of people are graduating with debt, and that amount right now is averaged at 28K. I have way more than that for education. As I said earlier, in referring to the way that youth unemployment is actually, for people under 25, is double the unemployment rate of the country, and that's a big deal because a lot of times when we talk about the way that money is funneled into our economy, it's people going out and spending money. In order to create jobs, people have to spend money. We're a consumer economy, we have tourism throughout our country, and it's really important that young people as well as old people can spend money. Otherwise, we just get a stagnated portion of our society that is not allowing the country to grow as quickly as it once could. And part of underemployment is the low wages. Now, if we go out and look for jobs right now, there's a great possibility that we'll run into a situation in which we'll find a job, but it won't necessarily be as high as the industry standard will, either because there's some expectation of experience that's there now in order to in order to get into these positions, or we'll be in a situation in which the companies are not going to be paying as much. There are multiple implications to the economy. Doubling on top of it, because there are so many people that are young that don't have as much money as they once did or would have in older versions of the economy, people paying into taxes has actually dropped dramatically. People are staying at home longer, moving back in with mom and dad in order to be able to repay debt obligations and things along those lines. But one of the major things that we see is a $6.8 billion debt between 2007 and 2011. Now, that may not seem a lot, but we're also coming on an age in which baby boomers are retiring in massive numbers. We're going to see a lot of strain on Social Security, and while most people are going to have some form of savings, more often than not that the savings is depleted by massive medical costs that they'll incur at some point. Now, Texas is actually better off than most other states. We have one of the lowest and if not the best unemployment rate across the country. Now, this is actually kind of strange because when you start getting into it, while yes, the Texas economy is growing, the state has recovered much better than a lot of other cities around the country, we still see situations in which there are massive disparities in the rates at which different portions of our society are being unemployed. We sit at 5.2% overall as of when this article was written, but Texan youths are actually higher than they have been in the past pre-recession rates. They're also going to be, they maintain the same unemployment rates as time has passed for people 20 to 24. One of the more interesting things is when you talk about the divide among gender and among women. Women are young women are 77% more likely to be underemployed. While they may have jobs, they will have to work multiple jobs in order to get it. And then when you start talking about minority breakdowns of unemployment rates for millennials that are Black or Hispanic, they face anywhere between 25 to 18% unemployment, which is greatly higher than the white population in our state. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass on over to Kate.
Okay. So in terms of the second, no, it's okay. In terms of the second article, which we covered, is titled "No One Should Have to Work for Free." It covers how the federal district court judge in Manhattan ruled that Fox Searchlight Pictures violated federal payment in terms of its payment to the New York minimum wage by failing to pay 2 interns working on the film Black Swan. Has anyone seen that film before? All right, this is a pretty high-cost production. They deserve to be paid. Well, as of that year and as of 2013, that was the first lawsuit of its kind when it was filed 2 years prior to this ruling, and many more have been filed in its time since. Critics of unpaid jobs argue that Americans can afford to work for free because of the fact that there are so many more opportunities available to them. How many of you have ever worked for an interview or worked for an internship, for free? What did you feel about it? Did it feel like it was fair compensation for the work you did?
Well, she was very flexible with my schedule, though, so I really like. But that was for the first one. The second one, she's kind of like, she gave me this pay for her.
Okay, that's typical. I mean, in the last class, we went over a video in which there was a recommendation at the Carnegie Mellon TED Talk where he encouraged students to work for free. Free work is a great portfolio builder. However, despite that common assumption, unpaid interns are privileged college kids to some. However, in the 2012 study, it showed that they are mostly middle or working class, which I'm sure that we already know, and they often hold down second jobs to just pay the bills. And like Thomas had mentioned, 77% of them are female. In the Ross Perlin literature, Information, he thinks of this wave as a constant beginning and end unpaid jobs. And this is just to fill a definite gap in terms of unpaid internships and the skills required for a full-time job. It is pretty common that when you go out and you're looking for your first full-time paid position, they either want you to have a prerequisite of skills that are perfectly matching to their own, and they want you to have an education to go with it. But when you're working full-time as a student, how is it realistic for some of them to work full-time as an employee as well? But in terms of the Ross Perlin novel, he underlines a lot of principles that he seems to be principles that are paramount, and those are unclear laws, nonprofit, college requirements, rite of passage, and afraid of being blacklisted. In terms of being blacklisted, what he means in terms of his book was that being able to have a concurrent running list of good, positive reviews from the places you worked, rather than having to deal with, a gap in your work or employment history where some places you may not have been recommendable and others you may have. So he recommends that having small jobs that have positive influence on your overall image or your personal branding are much more recommended than just the base level, having the education to boot. So with this, we're going to wrap up and conclude our formal presentations. Do you guys have any questions? Okay, so we're gonna be doing our quiz a little differently today. I need everybody to take out a piece of paper and a pen and note copies off of your neighbor. All right.
Will you read the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Before we start the quiz, though, is there anything that maybe we didn't go over as well as we should have that may have hindered your understanding of our presentation? Really, if there are any discrepancies, raise your hand, ask a question. I'm more than happy to answer it. Nope. All right. Great. First question is going to be the total amount of student debt. Just give us a numeric there. 2, a condition where highly skilled, educated workers are working in low skill and low paid jobs. 3, underemployment has caused massive losses to Social Security to the tune of, again, put a quantitative here. 4, the year a study showed that interns are mostly middle or working class, often working second jobs to pay the bills, and are most likely to be female, or more likely to be female. And last but not least, list 2 of the 5 hurdles that stand in the way of ending unpaid internships. Just 2. Can be any of those